So in the last lecture, we made sure that we can send a post request. Now in a typical application, we want to show something to the user whilst the request is on its way. Now I will have to add Firebase is really quick. So we probably won't even have a chance to see a loading screen or something which we want to show to the user whilst the request is on its way. Still, it is a good practice to show something like this because in case you have some latency or maybe the user network is slow, you definitely want to show the user, hey, something is happening. So what do we want to show? Well, I want to show a spinner inside this modal. So instead of the order summary, I want to show a spinner so that the user can see that something is happening here. And once we are done, the modal should get closed. And the spinner, therefore, of course, will also disappear. So how do we do that? First of all, we need a spinner component. That is clearly a UI element. So here I will add a spinner folder and in there a spinner.js file. Now the spinner can simply be a simple functional component where I will return some JSX and as always, therefore import React from React and export the spinner function here as the file default, of course. Now to create a CSS spinner, we can simply take advantage of some resources we can find on the internet. If you search for CSS spinners, you're going to find that awesome project here, the very first search result, which you can see here in the video, which is a page with loads of CSS spinners and the code for it, which you can simply use. You can also adjust them here by picking a background color. And here I'm going to enter a hex code of white for the background and then a front color of this nice purple here. With that, you can choose any spinner, maybe this one here, but whichever one you like, and then you'll see the CSS code responsible for that spinner. Now I'm going to grab all that code. You also see the HTML code, which is really simple. I'm going to grab all that code and then head back to the React application. There I'll add a spinner CSS file and paste in the code I just copied. Now what I'll do is I'll quickly rename loader here to loader with a capital L, just to be in line with the other CSS file names I'm using in this project. And then I'm going to grab that HTML code here on the spinner and I'll use that in my spinner component as JSX. And the class, of course, has to be adjusted. It's class name. And I need to import the classes from my CSS file. So I'm importing it from spinner CSS. And then I'll set class name equal to classes.loader with a capital L. And that actually is all. The loading in between is like a fallback in case the CSS isn't displayed, then this will be shown. That actually is all the code I need for a spinner. Now I only need some logic to show it inside the modal whilst we are loading. So essentially, I conditionally want to render order summary or my spinner. Now for that I need a new state in my burger builder here. I'll add a state which I'll name loading and which is false initially. When it is true, I want to show the spinner. When it is false, I want to show the order summary in this component. So in the render method, I'll now add a check where I say if this state loading, then I want to show the spinner. And first of all, I'll set up the alternative, which is my order summary here, which should simply be that element here, that order summary element we have nested in the modal. I'll store it in this order summary variable up here, which I created with the let keyword. And I'll override it in case we have the loading state. Then here I want to use that new spinner component we just created. So let's import the spinner then. I'll add it here, import spinner from, and now we have to go to the components folder, of course, to the UI folder, and there to the spinner folder and import the spinner file from there. And now we can grab that spinner and use it down there in our render method. Here, I now want to set order summary should be my spinner, and this is simply a self-closing tag. With that, we can save this, and now we should output the order summary here, this variable we just created between the modal tags. So now we either show the spinner or we show the order summary. So let's save this and let's make sure that we now switch this loading state which we're checking here. We of course want to switch it here when we actually are continuing with the purchase. There, right at the start, I want to call this set state and set loading to true, of course, because now we are loading, the request is about to get sent. Once the response is there though, here where I log it, I no longer want to log it, but I want to stop loading. And I want to stop loading no matter what the response is, because the request is done even if it failed. So here I will now call this set state and set loading to false again, of course, so that we go back to the other, page, the other state. I also, of course, want to set loading to false if we have an error, because even if an error occurred, we want to stop loading. We don't want to show the spinner anymore because our UI would be stuck in this case and the user would think it's still, loading. Of course, as I said, I also want to close the modal. Well, that can be done easily because the modal is only shown if the state purchasing property here is set to true. So we should simply have to set purchasing to false here. So in both cases, I will also set purchasing to false so that we close the modal. So with that, let's try it out. If we go back to our burger and we create a burger and click order now and click continue, we didn't actually see the spinner, did we? Now, this makes sense due to the way we configured our app, but do you know why we didn't see the spinner? Can be hard to spot, but I'll give you a chance to pause the video and find the issue on your own before I will then show you why it's not working. Did you find out what's wrong? Now, I can tell you we are correctly setting loading and so on, and order summary also is the spinner therefore. But somehow our modal doesn't update and doesn't show this when we set this. Now there's a good reason for that. Consider our modal code. We use should component update here, and we basically only update the component if the show state changed. Here, however, the children of the component simply changed. So props children changed. We're passing a new child. We're passing the spinner instead of the order summary. That doesn't trigger an update here. So we simply have to fine-tune our should component update method in the modal component. And we have to check if next props children is actually different to this props children, so that it does update if it gets new children. With that change in place, once you saved it, if you now go back to your application and build a burger, now you have to watch closely because it's only going to stay there for a fraction of a second. But if you click continue, you see that loader. And you see that the styling was a bit broken. Let's quickly fix this. Simply have to go into the spinner, and there the background color on that loader before rule should be white, so FFF. The loader after color should also be white. And with that now, if we save this and we create one more burger and order that, now we have a nice looking spinner. Again, we don't see it that long because Firebase is that fast. Feel free to comment out this post request here to see it a little bit longer. So I'm going to do that. So now we're not sending a request and we're never changing back from the loading state. Now you can see the spinner here. So now we got a spinner in place, which we're showing whilst something is happening. Nothing is happening here, of course, because I commented out. But now we got this handled. Now let's also now handle the case that our HTTP request fails, because we want to inform the user about such a failure too.